show of force and defiance. For the Serbs in Bosnia and Herzegovina, this is a celebration. But for the rest of the country, it's a provocation. And this is the man behind it. Milorad Dodik, the Serb leader who's threatening to tear up this European state. He wants to take these parts of the country and join them with neighbouring Serbia.
We agree that we are one nation, and one day we will be one state.
Dodik has a powerful supporter. But Europe fears an escalation and has even sent new peacekeeping troops.
The question that is constantly being asked is whether there will be a war.
People here know how devastating that could be. In the 1990s, the country's different ethnic groups fought a brutal war. Now the agreement designed to end their conflict is being put to the test. So how did Bosnia and Herzegovina get here? Again. It's a country of bridges. Bosnia and Herzegovina, or Bosnia for short, has long connected Europe's east and west. But it's full of divisions, because it's mainly made up of 3 different ethnic groups. The biggest group, the Bosniaks, live here, where these dots are. They make up about 50% of the population. Then there are the Serbs, who account for just over 30%. And the Croats live here. They represent around 15%. Other minorities make up the rest of the country. Altogether, around 3 million people live here. They share a Slavic heritage, and their languages are very similar. One big difference is religion. Bosniaks are mostly Muslim. Serbs are mostly Orthodox Christian, and Croats are mostly Roman Catholic. By the way, we're talking about Serbs and Croats in Bosnia. But keep in mind, there are also the neighbouring states of Serbia and Croatia. Serbia backs Bosnian Serbs, while Croatia backs Bosnian Croats. For orientation, all these countries are part of the Balkan Peninsula in Southeast Europe, to the east of Italy. This region has been ravaged by conflicts. In Bosnia, the war between its 3 peoples lasted for over 3 years. We'll talk more about that later. For now, let's focus on how it ended. Because the peace agreement signed 30 years ago still shapes Bosnia today. The peace deal is known as the Dayton Accords, because it was negotiated at a US military base in Dayton, Ohio. It divided Bosnia into 2 main parts, or political entities, each with its own government and administration. One is Republika Srpska, made up of these highlighted parts, populated mostly by Serbs. The other is the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Mostly Bosniaks and Croats live here. There are no border checks between the 2 entities, as they are still part of one federal country, with the capital city Sarajevo. To prevent conflict, political power is shared between the 3 main ethnic groups. So Bosnia actually has 3 presidents. One Bosniak, one Serb, and one Croat. But there's someone more powerful than any of them. This German politician, Christian Schmidt, he's the High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, a role created by the Dayton Accords, a kind of supervisor to ensure the country keeps the peace. He's not even elected by people in Bosnia, but appointed by other countries and international organisations. And he has the power to impose and cancel laws.
He's perceived as an unaccountable viceroy who does what he wants. Someone who is actually not accountable to anybody in this country.
Damir Kapijic is a political scientist at the University of Sarajevo. He says people in Bosnia have mixed feelings about the High Representative's role.
The perceptions are both in a way of not disliking or fearing, but at the same time feeling that sometimes that position is necessary.
Schmidt's job is to ensure Bosnia stays unified. That's why he's battling with Serb separatist Milorad Dodik. Dodik is the president of the Republika Srpska, the predominantly Serb entity we mentioned earlier. He has long threatened to take Republika Srpska out of Bosnia and Herzegovina and unite it with Serbia.
We do not hide that we belong to one great Serbian nation. You will not destroy this nation's call to be united. This nation deserves to have a united state. We cannot be stopped on this path.
That's what has Europe so worried. Because separatism has led to war here before. And conflict here could mean Bosnia's neighbours getting involved too.
Which would then not lead to a peaceful breakup. This would then probably lead to what we call a regional dimension of a potential conflict.
So there's a lot at stake here, and Dodik's at the centre of it. Dodik's accused of attacking the constitutional order and is facing arrest by Bosnian federal authorities. But he's surrounding himself with heavily armed and loyal police officers from Republika Srpska. A recent attempt to arrest him failed.
The fact that some politicians speak about using firearms to prevent arrest shows that there's a conflict potential.
Tanja Topic is a political scientist in Banja Luka, Republika Srpska's main city. She works for a political foundation close to Germany's Social Democratic Party.
The question that is constantly being asked is whether there will be a war. So that tension and that danger exists.
Because, remember the Dayton Accords? That peace deal stopped the fighting. But the different ethnic groups still don't agree on how the state should be organised.
Bosniaks, as a majority, have a tendency to want a unitary state because they would make the most relevant decisions in this state. They would be the majority. This is something that goes against the core existence of both Serbs and Croats, which then push for more autonomy, decentralization.
Most of the country's political parties are aligned with ethnic groups. The three main groups, Bosniaks, Serbs and Croats, can block key decisions. So making real change is difficult. And other minorities say they're being left out. People lack a unifying Bosnian identity.
The new generation was brought up with a strong sense of their ethnic national identity. They were raised in ghettos. Young people from different groups do not know each other.
And this has a lot to do with the country's past. Let's come back to this ethnic map. How did this mix come about in the first place? In medieval Bosnia, the Catholic Church competed with other forms of Christianity. After it was conquered by the Ottoman Empire in the 15th century, part of the population converted to Islam. And more Orthodox Christians moved to Bosnia from other parts of the Ottoman Empire. In the late 19th century, Bosnia fell under the rule of Austria-Hungary. Nationalist movements grew. People increasingly linked religion with national identity and political allegiance. Shots fired by a Bosnian Serb in Sarajevo sparked the start of the First World War. After it ended, there was an attempt at cooperation with the founding of a common state for the South Slavic people, later called Yugoslavia. But in the Second World War, Bosniaks, Serbs and Croats mostly fought on different sides, and often against each other. After that, Yugoslavia was re-established as a socialist state, made up of what is now Bosnia, Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, North Macedonia, Kosovo, and Montenegro. In post-war Yugoslavia, the official state communist ideology meant ethnic grievances were initially swept under the rug. But these problems resurfaced when Yugoslavia began to disintegrate. Armed conflicts started in 1991, after Slovenia and Croatia declared independence. They were attacked by the Yugoslav People's Army, which was dominated by Serbs. Meanwhile, what is now North Macedonia separated peacefully. In 1992, most of Bosnia's population voted for independence in a referendum. But the vote was boycotted by the Serbs there, who wanted to stay part of Yugoslavia. Serbs in Bosnia received support from Serbs in the rest of Yugoslavia, and soon started fighting Bosniaks and Croats.
It's even called differently. So among many Bosniaks, you would call it an aggression. Among many Serbs, you would call it a civil war. Most commonly agreed is just to call it the war or the Bosnian War.
Bosnian Serb forces surrounded the capital, Sarajevo. All sides committed war crimes. But Serb forces in particular forced other ethnic groups out of the areas they controlled. United Nations peacekeepers failed to stop the violence. It's estimated that around 100,000 people were killed, including around 62,000 Bosniaks, almost 25,000 Serbs, and around 8,400 Croats. The single biggest crime took place in 1995, when Bosnian Serb forces overran UN troops in Srebrenica and executed over 8,000 Bosniak men and boys. The International Court of Justice later ruled that this was a genocide. After Srebrenica, NATO repeatedly bombed Serb troops to force them into a peace deal. Later, it deployed 60,000 peacekeepers. The Dayton Accords were signed off in Paris in 1995, and the war was over. But echoes of the conflict remain, and reconciliation is slow.
In the past 30 years, we have failed to critically confront our past. We do not accept our own guilt, and we accept only our own victims. It's a vicious circle.
There's another challenge. Now Bosnia's in the middle of tensions between Russia and the West. Bosnia is right on the border of the European Union, but not a member. It is also not a part of NATO. That leaves it in a weak position. Russia is supporting Dodik, the Bosnian Serb leader. He has been a frequent visitor to Moscow.
It's the kind of influence that doesn't cost Russia much or anything. And this is meetings between leaders, it costs a few minutes. This is writing notes of support, messages, political messaging.
At the UN and elsewhere, Russia has denied the legitimacy of Christian Schmidt as the High Representative. But Russia is relatively far away. Dodik's other allies, closer to home, are Serbia and Hungary. Dodik has close ties with Serbia's president Aleksandar Vučić and Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. So where does the EU come into all this? It wants to prevent Bosnian Serb separatism. It recently boosted the number of peacekeeping troops in Bosnia.
Welcome everybody, welcome in Sarajevo.
And in 2024, the EU agreed to start membership negotiations with the country. But this comes more than 20 years after the EU first said it would integrate Bosnia.
And believe me, we are ready.
So people there are skeptical.
There's a joke. If you would ask most people like where they'll be in 10 years, most of them would say in the EU. The only question is whether they will emigrate or whether Bosnia will become a member. So in this sense, most people do see their future in the European Union. And this is disregardless of which ethnic group we're talking about.
Russia's war in Ukraine has given the EU a new incentive to act faster. Now, lack of progress on integrating Bosnia in the EU looks like a problem.
And this is also now coming back to the EU as a sort of weakness, basically being told that, look, if you can't even deal with your immediate neighborhood that you have essentially promised to reform and integrate, how do you think you can deal with something bigger?
But there are issues on the Bosnian side too.
We are waiting to become a member of the European Union. At the same time, it doesn't absolve us from responsibility for what we have failed to do. We haven't carried out the reforms that we need ourselves.
Addressing Bosnia's problems will require fixing the shortcomings of the Dayton Accords. But in the short term, the most pressing issue is the threat of Serb separatism and how to tackle it.
An optimist would say that what's currently going on is actually a sign that the state institutions are working, that Bosnia is becoming more functional and strong. Pessimists would say that this is just one crisis of many and that we'll see many more to come. Probably the truth is somewhere in between.
Bridging deep internal divides will be crucial for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Otherwise, tensions between competing global powers will only pull the country further apart.